So we're back from the trip. Short blast around the north of England, taking in a bit of the Trans-Euro Trail. I had a fantastic time with 5 of us. You can see the movie that we made. You get a bit of a vibe for what it was about. Bit of road, bit of trail work, and just general fun really. Okay, so I guess the first thing to say is everyone will have a different opinion on what makes the right setup for this kind of trip. So we did a bit of road, a bit of trail, a bit of camping. We were never too kind of remote, we were never too far away from help if we needed it, but we did need to stay kind of self-sufficient. We were eating out on campfires and eating out in restaurants, but it was pretty indicative of what a lot of the Trans-Euro Trail experiences are going to be. You can do that kind of trip on any kind of budget. The Trans-Euro Trail is designed for light and medium weight bikes. It's not really designed for big GS stuff, and so consequently a lot of the packing and what you take with you, and for me personally, is always about how little can I take and still get a level of comfort that I'm happy with and will help me enjoy the trip. So I find the less I take on the bike and on me, the lighter I am, the lighter the bike is, the more enjoyable the riding. And I think once you've done this a few times, you'll find that you can live without a lot of creature comforts and still have a good time. Every single time I go on this kind of trip, I'm always refining my gear. Even this time, and I've done it quite a bit, I had stuff that I didn't need and I didn't use and I might not take again. So yeah, so I'm just going to kind of talk through my setup. Obviously, I'm working with adventurespec, so a lot of the gear that I take is stuff that adventurespec sell, but adventurespec stock it because we believe that this is the kind of gear you need for this kind of trip. But yeah, ask another person and they'll give you a different opinion about what the right gear is. Hopefully you can hear me, it's a little bit windy, but yeah, let's give it a go. So first of all, the AJB PR7 was my choice of bike. There's lots of other films on my YouTube channel about that bike. I guess just quickly, it performed brilliantly. These journeys that I've done in the past, I've used my KTM 450 EXC, which has been really good for the trickier stuff. But after my big trip around Northern Europe, I kind of realized that it was overkill for that kind of journey. So actually something that's a little bit more, less race focused and more trail focused was going to be more comfortable. And so that's why I went with the AJP. Again, I'll talk more about that in another film, but yeah, massive thumbs up. I had no mechanicals, none of us had any flat tires. There were a few things in my head that I was worried about. It's a new bike, I don't really know it yet. But in the end, everything worked perfectly. And we did, I don't know actually, I'm going to say about 600 miles, something like that. So it was an epic journey, but it was enough to have fun. Okay, the joys of filming outside. Well, it's sunny one minute and cloudy the next. Anyway, we'll crack on. So a big part of trail riding for me is filmmaking, photography. So camera gear is quite important to me. So if the most that you do is take an iPhone with you, some of the gear that I would take would be a bit redundant. So let's start over here. This is a saddle bag made by Giant, a saddle bag for a bicycle. I adapted the tablet holder on my AJP PR7 to receive this, and I kind of wanted to make use of the space between the tablet and the screen because I just think it's quite a good bit of space to kind of put stuff. The original idea was to be able to keep my camera in here so that it would always be easy to get hold of and get out, but in the end it was a little bit too tight of a fit. I have got a solution for that. I'm not going to go into it now, but I'm going to adapt that setup a little bit. In the end, I didn't use anything in here. So it opens up, there's a dry bag, and in my dry bag, some sweetie wrappers. I did use the sweetie wrappers. So this is some camera gear basically. I've got my GoPro, which I didn't use because some of the other guys were doing GoPro stuff. I've got a couple of little clip-on microphones. They're called Insta mics. Again, I didn't actually use these. I've got some spare batteries that didn't get used, and I've got some mounts for the various cameras. Again, none of that got used on this trip. But it was 20 quid, and I think I may well use it again in the future, but could have done without that on this trip. This is the Giant Loop zigzag bag. One of my favorite bags. I absolutely love it. It mounts on the handlebars. It can go on any bike. What I do is I use these loops at the end to cable tie it tightly to the bike, so I know it's not going to come off. And in here, I had my buff, which has actually become an absolutely essential bit of kit because it's my face covering, and during these COVID times, you need a face covering when you go into shops. So that was that. Hand gel, COVID, prepared. I also have in here my Motion Pro trail tool, and this stays in here rather than with the rest of my toolkit, just because it's a very handy tool, and rather than having to get into the bottom of my panniers, which is where all my heavy stuff and my heavy tools are, I just like to have it handy when I need it. And also I have a small Leatherman, which is actually currently not in this bag. I think I've put it away since I got home. It's a Leatherman Crunch, which I find really handy because you can use it as mole grip, and some cable ties. So everything that I might need kind of really quick and handy. In the end, we didn't really have any mechanicals, nothing. Well, there was one major one, but that was, yeah, you have to watch the film to find out what that was. But it wasn't on my bike. Another lane, another mechanical. I had Clive in my ear, and I just heard a gunk, and then whoa! And it looks like his bash plate is smashed off. Okay, we're gonna move to the back of the bike now. So this is the Kirega US 5. I absolutely love these bags. They're really versatile, really easy to mount. I use them all the time. So on this trip, it was mounted on the very back of the bike, and I had it clipped onto some Kirega cam straps, which you can see the setup on the bike. And inside this is the new adventurespec tarp. So new we don't have a name for it yet. I packed this and brought it with me because I wanted to get some photos and some media of this being used on the trip. In the end, we didn't use it. I think it would be absolutely fantastic product for really super lightweight camping, the Austin Vince style. Also, what I think it would be great for is if there's a few of you and the weather is bad, you can, this is huge, this is really big, I'm not going to get it out here, but it's a really big tarp. And you could string it up between several bikes and create quite a comfortable shelter. Even if you're not going to sleep under it, just to cook under and hang out if the weather's bad and you're raining. And because you've got the bikes, you don't need trees or whatever to hang it off. You can rig it up amongst yourselves. But yeah, I'll be making some more media about that sometime soon. On this trip, again, didn't need it. So essentially that bag and that bag could have been left behind. So we're getting even lighter. Okay, onto the Giant Loop Rogue. Okay, so I have used previous versions of this bag on previous tech trips. It's the smallest one they do. I think they do another 2 sizes that are larger than this. Comes with kind of shoulder straps and all the rest of it. It's perfect size for keeping all of my camping gear in, and it's really easy to get on and off the bike and access. So in this version of the Rogue, which is the newer version, they've added a carry handle. It doesn't sound like much, but actually it was quite handy when we were camping away from the bike and had to carry stuff from the bike to where we were camping. Also this air release valve, which basically means that you can stuff everything in, open this, close it, sit on it, squash it, kneel it, force all the air out, and then tighten that, and you're kind of creating a vacuum bag, which helps keep everything really tight and small. So I before I go, I kind of adjust the straps to the length I know I'm going to need, and I just kind of cable tie those to keep them out of the way. It opens both ends, but you normally just leave one end shut all the time. So in here I have, this is my Thermarest sleeping mat. It's a new one, it's not a self-inflating one. It actually packs down smaller and inflates thicker than my previous versions of the Thermarest. Love this. Basically, I got three Thermarests before I got this one, and since having kids, the value of a good night's sleep has dramatically increased. So I'm slowly justifying spending more money on my kit that allows me to have a good night's sleep away from the kids. If you haven't had a year of no sleep, you won't know what I'm talking about. But if you have, you do know what I'm talking about. So that's my Thermarest. Okay, what's next? This is a dry bag, and inside the dry bag, it's actually quite wet because I haven't unpacked it yet. I have my tent outer, which is in its own dry bag, and my tent inner. It's actually just got a bit wet because it was raining on the last day that we left. So the idea behind this is that if you have an extra dry bag inside your dry bag, you can separate your wet outer from your inner, which should in theory stay drier. This is a Vaude Super, what's it? It's a Vaude Hogan Ultralight Argon. I got this before I was even married. It's like a single, tiny single tent, one-man tent, and it's really designed to just pack down really small, really light, if you're going to put it on a rucksack and climb up a mountain. I like it for this kind of trip because of just the lack of size. It packs so small. The only problem with it is that it has a very small porch. So if you've got boots and helmets and all sorts, you've kind of got to figure out what comes in with you and what stays outside the tent. But yeah, no, great tent. Okay, so that's there. Okay, so poles for the tent. Actually, on that, one of the guys I was with, Will Linson, he mentioned that nowadays there's tents set up for bike packing, which actually, so the length of that is, so these poles collapse down, and there's a trend for bike packing which is super lightweight packing, and they now have tents with poles that fold an extra half. So this, although it will be thicker, is kind of half the length, which I think is a fantastic idea. So that's something I might be checking out for my next tent. This is a very old Mountain Hardware Laminar something or other 3-season tent. I wouldn't use this if it was cold because it's kind of well past its best, but the weather's been warm, so it's fine. The next significant purchase I think that I'm going to make is a really good down sleeping bag, which should pack even smaller than that and give more warmth at night. But you're looking at 300-400 quid, you know. So again, it's not a cheap purchase. You've got to kind of justify how much camping you're going to do and how much value you put on a good night's sleep. But that essentially, when I get to camp, that is everything that comes out first and gets put up before anything else happens. All in that giant loop bag. Okay, I'm just tidying up a little bit, make a bit of room. So this Giant Loop Rogue bag is attached to the OS base using these Kirega cam straps. Cam straps, oh, they're not sexy at all, are they? These ones are. They are expensive for considering they are just a cam strap, but what you get is a system that is designed to work with the rest of the Kirega system. I don't want to talk all day about them, but they're super versatile. And they work really well. So you can either use the loop to hook it into a loop, or you can use the loop to put it under a strap, back on itself, through, and it creates a really tight fastening, and that's what I did at the back end of the system of the luggage. I really like these a lot, and they get used all the time on my gear. So I also used one to create a bit of triangulation on the OS base, so it comes up over my seat, which is not part of the system. It's just something that I've adapted, and I did it on my KTM on the last trip, and I did it on this one again, and it worked really well. Okay, let's move down. Okay, so here we have the Kirega OS 12s, OS standing for Overland system. So each of these is a 12-litre bag, so this creates 24 litres. They come in another size, an 18. I find the 18 is a little bit large for the kind of riding and packing that I do, so I stick with these. So on this trip, in these bags, I have, this is my camera bits and bobs stuff. So has camera chargers, I've got like my head torch. I keep everything together in here just so I can grab it, get into the tent, and I know I've got everything I need. I have a Zendure power bank, an absolutely massive one. In some ways it's so big and heavy, I kind of feel like I should have got the size down from this. The general idea is that you charge your gear overnight from your power bank. So rather than charging as you go from the bike, if you run out of juice, you charge your power bank from the bike, and then at night you can, in your own leisure, recharge your gear. And that would be my phone, my intercom or my helmet, any other bits and bobs. Yeah, so that's what I keep in there. I have the adventurespec Baltic insulated jacket. Fantastic camping jacket. This trip was way too warm to need to use this while I was riding, but when I got to camp, it was super quick and easy to take my other gear off. If you don't want to be walking around in an armoured jacket, and put this on. If I was cold at night, I could put that on inside my sleeping bag, but it also makes a super comfy pillow inside a stuff sack. Yeah, love it. What else do we have in here? This is my cooking gear. This is all I took for cooking, and I didn't use it because we ended up kind of posh camping and eating out quite a bit and cooking on the fire. So I use dry bags for everything, so you can just separate everything out. So I've got an MSR stove, a cup, and a folding spork thingy. I didn't even take any gas because I figured someone else would have it. It wasn't that kind of trip. It was I was leading, and the aim of this trip was to basically go from nice restaurant to nice restaurant. So I kind of knew I wasn't going to need it that much. So this is another dry bag that has got all my spare clothes in it. That, for me, is really big, and it's also big because I didn't use anything in here. The only thing I used was a pair of shorts. I think maybe at the first campsite, yeah. So I used one pair of shorts. Oh, I'm lying. I used a towel because we went for a little swim in the river, a bit of wild swimming. And then everything else from there on in was literally just a spare set of what I was wearing in case I got completely soaked and I needed a set of warm gear, warm dry gear. So a t-shirt, underwear, socks. Socks would be the important one if I got wet feet, and some more kind of thermal, adventurespec thermal base layers. But for this trip I didn't use any of that. So that's everything compressed into that. Okay. So the other OS 6 on the other side of the bike. Let's see what we've got in here. My adventurespec Baltic hybrid mid-layer jacket. You notice I kind of keep those things near the top so it's easy to get hold of if I'm cold while I'm riding and I just need an extra layer. The whole adventurespec principle, clothing principles are built around ADV layering, so rather than having everything you need in one jacket and one pair of trousers. We've separated that out, and you can just put on whatever layer you need as and when the conditions change, which is not necessarily revolutionary if you're from the mountaineering background, but in motorcycling it is, and it works really, really well. Toiletries, don't need to go into anything like that. There is a hip flask in there as well, empty now. What else have we got here? Right, pair of waterproof over trousers. So I was wearing the AdventureSpec Mongolia Trail trousers, which are fantastic over the boot trousers. They're really tough, really robust, comfortable, and they do shrug off a rain shower, but they are not entirely waterproof. So for the day when it was absolutely hammering down, I did put these Climb over trousers on, which kept me super, super dry. Also, that's not in this bag at the moment is the AdventureSpec Aquapack jacket, which I would wear over the top of my linesman jacket. I'll make another film specifically about the gear that I was wearing if you're more interested in the AdventureSpec setup. So what else have we got in here? So I have a spare inner tube, pretty essential. I mean, we also got patches if we needed to kind of repair something, but for valve tears or something like that, you need a new inner tube. This would be a 21-inch lightweight inner tube, as light as I can, just because it's a spare and I need it to kind of be lighter and smaller in my pack. But if you have a 21-inch front, you can also put that in your rear if you're stuck. But you can't put an 18-inch rear in your 21-inch front wheel. So yeah, that's that. Didn't need it. This is another Kirega US5 bag. I keep all my tools in here. Sometimes if I'm just going out for a day's trail riding, this is strapped onto the outside of the bike without any of this luggage. So that's just kind of why I keep this for my toolkit. So like I said, the Motion Pro Trail tool is more handy up in my zigzag bag. Okay, so I have some gaffer tape or Gorilla tape. I have a pump. I have some paracord. I felt a little bit lazy on this trip, so I did bring a CO2 canister pump, but obviously you don't need both of those. And if you're going to do something long distance where you're going to be out of reach of spares, you probably wouldn't take that and you just rely on a hand pump. I have a set of Motion Pro T6 spanners, spanner tire levers. So I have, let's see what we got here. So that's a 27 and 12 to 13 mil, and also a 22 mil. So these are really handy because they act as tie levers, but they also have the socket head on the other side. The key is to make sure that you have the right size socket head for what your bike needs. So my KTM front and rear wheel axles are 27 mil, so that's normally what I would take. But on my new PR7, I think the rear is 27 and the front is 22, so that's why I added that. You know, they're super light, they don't take up much space. You could probably get away with 3 rather than 4. You know, I just stuck an extra one in. And then I use this Motion Pro 27 mil wrench adapter, which is pretty handy. Turns the whole thing into something that you can use with a socket and get a bit of leverage on. Haven't had to use that yet, but it's a neat feature. What else do we have? Okay, some Giant Loop pronghorn straps. Always really handy if you suddenly need to strap something else to the bike. A spare CO2 canister. Another spare CO2 canister. So that's empty now. And then this is the other kind of significant part of my toolkit, which is a Motion Pro, is it T6? I can't remember, it's got the T6 in the name, but it's the chain tool. And I did actually use this because I changed the split link on my AJP halfway through the trip because I'm a bit paranoid about that breaking. I prefer to use a rivet link on my bikes because you kind of can be more confident that there's not a weak link in the chain. I think split links are used so you can kind of do easy chain maintenance, but nowadays, you know, I don't know who takes their chain off and soaks it in paraffin or whatever to clean it and puts it back in, maybe before O-rings, etc., etc. But yeah, as soon as I can, I'm going to kind of change that split link for a rivet link on that bike. Yeah, so in here I have this tool. It makes, I mean, I've changed split links without this tool, and it's a right faff on trying to compress it, so you can compress the plate to the point where you can actually fit the, I don't know, can't remember what you call, but the security slidey pin plate thing, and this thing makes it really, really easy to do that. I also carry in here a spark plug removal tool. So first thing I did when I got this bike was to check to see what size the spark plug is. It happens to be the same size socket that I use for my KTM, which is a 16mm. So yeah, the reason why you'd have this is if you ever drown your bike and you need to get that spark socket out to empty empty the water out of the piston if it gets in there. So that's important. Spoke tightener, and then just all sorts of bits and bobs in here. I've got patches, some spare bolts, etc. I think the important bit of in here is having the right size split link for my bike, which is an X-ring. Yeah, should I need it. And that's it really. That all kind of packs up pretty handy, pretty small. So that is the extent of my toolkit that I take with me. Like I said, this trip we weren't going terribly far. You know, we were always going to be kind of within spitting distance of a garage, or can get home, get a van or whatever. If you were going to Outer Mongolia, you'd have more, I think. But for me, this is quite a decent setup. Paracords there, it's pretty handy at camp if I wanted to put the tarp up. I'd probably also rely on that paracord as a tow rope if it came to it. Maybe double it up, it's quite a long length. But yeah, you might want to add a strap in here to use as a tow rope. Okay, so these Kirega OS 12s were mounted to the bike using this OS base system. I used this on my KTM on my previous trip and it worked very, very well. It's quite a versatile system. It's really designed for quite a slim bike. When I came to mount it on the PR7, it's quite an unusual bike, the PR7 in many ways, and I found it wasn't a perfect fit. I do wonder if the new versions of this, which are out for, I think the T700 and the KTM 790 might be a better fit because those are slightly wider bikes. But it didn't take me long to figure out the best way to do it. At the top of the bike on the rear fender, I didn't want to drill holes to add more mounting points. So I used the Kirega subframe loops to create mounting points. You take the seat off, you mount those on your sub loop, put the seat back on, and you have these little loops that come out the side, and because they're mounted or tied to the subframe, it's a really secure connection. I did consider getting a rear rack on the PR7, but even though that is it kind of extends the subframe further out, I didn't really want to put something on that was going to be forcing weight further over the rear wheel and putting more weight on that subframe. So I opted for a different version. So I just used off a Kirega US5, I used one of their straps to connect those two subframes. So essentially I had a strap at the back of the bike, and then I used this to mount onto that strap. So that gave me the mounting point to pull forwards from. And then the other thing to kind of point out is on the PR7, like these straps are not really long enough to go around the frame of the bike. And I tried a few different things. You could use the same subframe loops to create a loop on the frame at the bottom of the bike, but I have a good friend Adam who works at Rally Rage, and I was talking to him about it, and we noticed that there's an M8 threaded hole at the bottom of the frame on the bike near the foot pegs, and I designed a very simple mounting plate, a cleat to go on there, and Adam very kindly laser cut that for me. It's a bit rusty now because it was a prototype and it's not anodized or anything. We were just testing it out, but that allowed me to create a loop on these and mount it to next to the foot peg. And I think Kirega do actually make something like that for the 690, but we made our own for the PR7. It worked really, really, really well. So that was a great solution I was pretty happy with. So that's all the luggage on the back of the bike. Other than that, the only other stuff that I took with me was this new Kirega Trail 9 pack. So in the past, when I've used a rucksack, I've used a Kirega R15, and if I'm going really lightweight, I've used the Hydra pack, which has just got water. So this is kind of a somewhere between the two, really. It's a 9-litre pack, which also has a 3-litre, or I think you can have up to 3.5-litre bladder inside it as well. I cannot say enough good things about this. It was fantastic. Ideally, I would have liked to have kept my camera on a tank bag on the bike, and in the past I've used the Giant Loop Diablo Pro. First of all, I like keeping stuff off my back, and then secondly, I like being able to grab my camera really quickly, and if it's there just right in my crotch, I can grab it and go. Unfortunately, I don't really find the fit of that working so well on the PR7, so I opted to keep my camera on my back, but I don't want a big rucksack on my back. I just wanted something quite small, and I was always going to have a hydration pack to keep water in, and this thing has been absolutely awesome. So it just rolls out like that. I can't show you the camera because the camera is on the tripod filming me, but it's a little Panasonic GH5, and that fits really well in there. I have a small tripod which I use in there. I would keep a spare battery and a spare and lens. I use equivalent of a 50 and a 24mm lens for wide and tight, and then just some stuff to pad the bottom, a little scarf and an extra buff, just to kind of keep a little padding at the bottom if I put this on the ground to soften it for the camera, and that's it. You could keep a spare pair of gloves, a bit of food, whatever. You could probably fit a small drone in there if that's what you want, but the point is it's quite small, and then it has this extra section on the back if you had something wet that you wanted to keep away from your dry stuff, or lunchtime, a bottle of pop and sandwich or whatever. But yeah, that's it. It's a very, very, very simple bag, but one that I will be using a hell of a lot. I'm kind of surprised by that because I didn't really think I needed a new rucksack, but having used this, I've been super, super impressed. And it just mounts like any other kind of Kirega chest harness, and this is just an AdventureSpec badge that I put on it because whenever you wear a rucksack, it covers the badge of the AdventureSpec gear that I'm wearing, and part of my job is to take photos of that and all the rest of it, so that's why I put that on there, but that's not normally there. So yeah, that's it. That's all the gear that I took. I will make another film about some of the clothing, the AdventureSpec clothing, if you're interested in some of that. And if you go onto the AdventureSpec website, there'll be more media there about what some of the other guys were using. But yeah, I hope this has been helpful. Like I said at the start, I've rambled on a little bit, but you can go in whatever you've got in your garage. I wouldn't ever want someone to watch this and feel like they couldn't go out and do something adventurous on their bike because they haven't got all this gear. So I didn't have any of this gear when I started out, and if you go back and look at some of my older films, you'll see how my gear has evolved as I've gone. But the more you do it, I think the more you start to understand the kind of riding that you enjoy, and then you start to discover the kind of gear that's built to help you do that. And I'm pretty happy with my setup at the moment. So we've got some new AdventureSpec luggage on the way. So they're just at a prototype stage, so we're kind of moving that forwards into production. So I'm really looking forward to trying that out and seeing how that works on a lightweight setup. But yeah, I hope this has been helpful. And if you've got any questions, do just fire them out. I will answer them as best I can. And whatever you are doing on the Trans-Euro Trail or wherever you're going, I hope you have a fantastic time. Yeah, take a picture, share it. And if you're into photography and motorbikes, take a look at Shoot and Ride, which is my personal project on the side. I love following the hashtag on Instagram and seeing people with the stickers on their bikes, who are obviously getting a lot of enjoyment out of that. So yeah, thank you for your time, and I'll see you soon.